Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. In a digital age where trust is the currency and sovereignty the fortress, the challenge lies in building resilient, interpretable systems that uphold both security and the individual rights. Recent breakthroughs in frontier technologies, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, innovative encryption methods are transforming digital ecosystems and redefining the cybersecurity landscape. They are shifting the power dynamics between states, private entities, and users, exposing vulnerabilities. In critical infrastructure such as the recent SWOT Typhoon espionage operation and fueling challenges like deepfake misinformation and automated ransomware. Today's discussions will explore how policymakers, technical communities, governments, civil societies, and private sector can collaboratively establish robust governance frameworks, principles rooted in security by design, resilience, and digital sovereignty to ensure global interoperability and trust. So allow me to introduce my speakers. First, my name is Enes Mafuta from the Zambia Standardization Technical Committee. I'll be your moderator. To introduce our online panelists, we have Artsen Boko, who is from Code for Africa, who is a security evangelist representing the African Region Group. And we have also Lily Edna Boswe from Ghana, who is a PhD candidate in information technology at University of Cincinnati. And we have our online moderator as well, Gabriel Kassan. I'm sure he's online. To come to the room, we have Dr. Kozefi Duban, who is our African Internet Governance MAG member, and he also sits as an advisory panel on AI. Then we have Bolutife Adisa, who is an information security. I've just seen him walk in. Please, you can join us. And he's also an MPOC communication chair at ICANN. Then we have our special lady here, Ihita, from India, who is a cybersecurity engineer and program manager at CloudSec Initiative. I'll go now to Osei Kega, who is our public technology interest specialist and from the Ghana Youth IGF. Last but not the least, we have Dr. Monojit, who is a cyber governance and a national security researcher at the Sea Joint Tri-Service think tank under the Ministry of Defense Government of India. So, ladies, gentlemen, we're going to have like 5 minutes each to respond to the questions. And from there, we're going to have interventions from the room, and we're going to also have some questions from the online speakers. So without wasting much of your time, I'll start with Mr. Artsen Samaila Boko, who is also online. Now, Artsen, given the rapid evolution of digital infrastructure and frontier technologies, how can the design of cybersecurity governance frameworks be optimized to strengthen both resilience and sovereignty while maintaining global interoperability? Specifically, how can policy evolve to address the operational strategic challenges posed by AI-driven cyber threat and quantum encryption? Artsen, 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we do.
We can hear you.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. That's a bit of a loaded question, but I'll try to answer it as best I can. I think the beauty of frameworks in our times today is that, we're, I would say, at a stable point. Over the years, they've been worked on, they've been refined, they've been improved. So I personally believe there's no real need to reinvent the wheel in terms of design. I also think that we don't need to have too many frameworks, per topic, per item, because I think at some point it's just be like a repetition of the same thing or remixing of what has been done before. What what I think the biggest issue in terms of what we're talking about is maybe the differences in how it's been adopted or implemented by different organizations or even countries, which obviously we all know will be impacted by things like political will or even the level of development in the country or the budgets they assign to things like this. And if I give an example using the cybersecurity industry where I mainly work, there's a popular NIST cybersecurity framework, which, by the way, just got a new version now, is in 2.0, that emphasizes the governance aspect of security. But however, if organizations do not take their own steps to get familiar with this new version or to adopt it, and upgrade their security practices, then they will naturally be left behind due to the pace of things in tech-related spaces, as you have rightly pointed out. And so when talking about frontier technologies or emerging technologies, a critical approach would be to leverage standards, because standards are widely adopted and trusted if they are solid enough, that's created by people with the right expertise and endorsed by the right bodies. So an example, for instance, if you look at another frontier tech like Internet of Things, the security of them, there's an organization called the Open Web Application Security Project, OWASP, that released this IoT project to, and I quote, to help manufacturers, developers, and consumers better understand security issues associated with Internet of Things and to enable users in any context to make better security decisions when building, deploying, or assessing IoT technologies. This means that both the manufacturers and users have a guide, and even regulators can choose the guide as a foundation or template for what the baseline security should look like when it comes to IoT devices. And then when that is enforced by a regulator, then you've raised the security bar in IoT devices globally because standards are recognized globally. So and I also like to add that there are other challenges. I think one of the key things is the general state of development, digital access, in some scenarios, even scarce subject matter experts or skilled workers. And lastly, the speed of law. And by speed of law, I'm talking about the process it takes for lawmakers to agree on the need for and decide to develop or even review and update laws because they can become obsolete quite frequently. So there's this popular saying in the cybersecurity industry that cyber criminals operate at the speed of light while law enforcement or the good guys operate at the speed of the law. And this implies that it will always be a game of catch up for us, and we are at the mercy of the interests, knowledge, and priorities of lawmakers and regulators. So in other words, for policy to evolve and meet the challenges of the day, regulators and lawmakers have to be knowledgeable or hire the right people and appreciate the need to prioritize policy around the development and use of emerging technologies. Only an intentional approach involving the experts, users, manufacturers, and other stakeholders can yield the desired results. I realize that if some of the people in the room or joining us online are in certain countries, then this may be a scary statement I've just given and it may spell out doom. I think I've physically exhausted my 5 minutes. I'll pause there. Thanks, Ernest.
Thank you very much, Artsen. And considering that you've talked about standards, I come from the standardization side. And one of the things that we have been struggling with is to find proper mechanism or adoptions of security by design standards and also and in security systems. Now, I'll now go to IHITA. IHITA, you've been part of various regional organizations. One of them is the ITU, and I think you've participated in the standardization making process, and also you coming from the Asia Pacific. So how do you see these countries balance the need of a strong security systems with the preservation of digital sovereignty, especially when deploying security by design within critical infrastructure like telecoms? So, in your view, how can this regional cooperate help safeguard sovereignty without creating fragmentation?
Thank you so much, Ernest. Hi, everyone, those joining us in person and remotely. I'm Mahita Gangavarpu. First of all, I would like to say that the session title is very apt because we use the term Odyssey. So it's been a long and eventful journey in the digital realm. and especially towards digital sovereignty. So if you look at from a decade ago, the global internet was held as something very sacred. And we used to believe in like free flow of data, technology, services, right? And when we are moving, you're seeing a shift towards regional control or localization now, and we've been hearing the term splinternet. But today the narrative has changed. It's not just one part of the world, but across geographies and across countries of all types of governments, could be democracies or authoritarian regimes, right? And they are placing serious bets on embedding sovereignty into their digital infrastructure. And I think much of this change that you see is because of the rapid digitalization. Because from India, since you mentioned APAC, we use the unified payments interface to make all the digital payments in the country, and there's been a widespread adoption of this. In addition to that, we have welfare services, healthcare, education. All of these are through digital systems. So internet and these systems have become critical infrastructure. And any disruption to this could be cyber attacks or any kind of a geopolitical turbulence is something that economies and the countries are actually trying to find mitigations against, right? So since you mentioned security by design, it's not just something, security by design is very fundamental, especially when you're looking at critical sectors like the telecom. It's not just about stronger encryption or monitoring. It's about designing systems where, what we're looking at is countries getting strategic control over data, technology, and access. In India, for example, the government has come up with a trusted telecom center where procurement of different telecom equipments to ensure that there is integrity and resiliency in what we incorporate in our infrastructure. And at CloudSec, we have seen firsthand, so we conduct threat intelligence research, and we have noticed that supply chain attacks and different vulnerabilities have been tied to shifting geopolitical dynamics as well. So these insights, show that security by design should go beyond compliance. It is something that you are anticipating risk at a very systematic level. And I'll also bring in an enterprise perspective, because sovereignty is not just about governments. Enterprises are equally invested. On one hand, they must comply with national regulations in every jurisdiction they operate in. But on the other, they must also offer their customers trust and assurance that the data is secure, private, and not subject to foreign laws. And you're seeing enterprises today also incorporating enterprise digital sovereignty, where they are demonstrate that they comply with local laws and resist foreign access requests, which could affect the trust that customers have on them. So given that there are so many dimensions to this, that's where I think regional cooperation comes in to ensure there's no fragmentation. So the answer lies in pragmatic alignment, where I mean that you need regional cooperation to enable trusted data flows, shared security principles, mutual recognition of vendors, trusted vendors, and even joint R&D on certain resilient infrastructure. And far from fragmenting the internet, it can actually strengthen the whole process. And just to add one last dimension to it, I'd like to talk about content and cultural sovereignty, because digital frameworks from countries allow countries to manage content moderation in ways that reflect their cultural and linguistic norms. And in the absence of this kind of a regional cooperation and alignment, global platforms may overlook and ignore local sensibilities, that many may call cultural or linguistic colonialism. So, I just wanted to highlight over this, and I'll look forward to your next set of questions.
Thank you, Ihita, for that. In the telecom or in the cyberspace, we say trust is a very expensive word, and the way you've highlighted it, it's something that we've been talking. But so I'll go now to Lily, who is online, with regard to trust and safety. Lily, I just want you to highlight how these policies and public interest-driven approaches can help to reinforce sovereignty without eroding the same trust. Like, in your view, how does societal confidence influence the success of national security measures, especially when new frontiers like threats like AI or quantum attacks are at play? Lily?
Hi, everyone, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you are joining from. I usually will say that I'm so thankful for the gift of the internet. And today I'll say I'm thankful for the gift of time zone also, because it allows me to join online before work and also allows me to do this from miles away. So I'm joining you at 3:15 from Cincinnati, Ohio, and excited to join this conversation. And so I met a little bit of what Ahita was describing, but I'm just going to dive into the conversation, use examples from what we're seeing in research, just center humans, like make this whole process human-centric and drive home the points I have in mind. So thankful for the audience we have in person and those we also have online. And so one of the questions, the question that NSS post has humans at the center if you look at it critically. And like you said, usually trust is so expensive because how exactly do you measure trust? So in this question that he asked right now, we have a very complex variable, which is a human being. And if you've dealt with humans, you know humans would react to things differently based on how it appeals to them. Sometimes using emotions, sometimes using what they perceive as safety, sometimes even using what it is that favors them at one point. And then I currently do research with users when it comes to the privacy aspect, and which pretty much is linked to security. So I'm going to go through that aspect to break down what it is that would help us to be able to make sure that humans are actually at the forefront of all that we're talking about when it comes to digital sovereignty in a way that they trust the process to make sure that it works for them and also to be people who accelerate this process. So one of the things that I'll start with is just a scenario. I was in a session where somebody spoke about community-based research, and the person threw out a question and said something along the lines of somebody had seen a cobweb. We all know what cobwebs are. So spiders weave cobwebs, right? And when they weave cobwebs, usually it's so pretty, they can stay for a couple of days and it can get broken down or it can stay for as long as it's protected. Now, somebody has seen that a part of the cobweb was broken, right? And the person had seen before the spider weaving a cobweb, and the person went in to try to use thread and a special material to try to complete the cobweb because it was broken. And the next day, the spider came, and this person who was a researcher sat at the side waiting to see what the spider would do. And here is where the shocker happened. So the spider came in, and in your mind, you probably think maybe the spider will be happy and say, well, it was broken, so you held me, right? The spider came and destroyed the whole thing. Now, the person threw the question to us and asked, why did the spider behave that way? And the conversation went round, and we came to understand that pretty much the spider wasn't contacted, wasn't interviewed, wasn't asked if they wanted that to happen, or wasn't asked their view on the process being done the way it was done, and they felt that it was unnatural. So that is what happens in this space of cybersecurity and this space of digital sovereignty, and I'll break it down as to the reason why it's so. Usually, when we talk about cybersecurity and tech, we usually would like to say that things like policies trail behind technology because technology is fast evolving. And then you build so much without usually thinking about the policies that reinforce and make this robust. And sometimes we find that it's trailing and we do the catch-up game to try to make sure that all these systems are within a certain confine that is protecting humans. At the center of cybersecurity and technology is that key factor, which is the human factor. If humans are not involved, if human views are not sought, usually we see that the adoption or the way that it is usually humans will usually react to things that we see when it comes to laws, policies, and all of that will be very it will be limited. And in essence, there's so much work that will be happening where people will be saying, hey, let's go back and probably do what they call stakeholder meetings or stakeholder engagement. And sometimes it is more reactive rather than proactive. So answering the question about how trust and safety for digital ecosystems can be pretty much heralded by humans in general, it brings up the whole question of even how government, if it were issues of, say, cybersecurity or not, without involving humans, usually the buy-in is very little. So I'll give you a past example aside from what we see with the with the spider story that I mentioned, where even the spiders think that they should have been contacted, and that is the idea of community-based research. And in that context, we say that's in the context of what we call multi-stakeholder engagement. When we involve more people from different backgrounds, it is legitimate and it becomes accepted. So in my view, societal confidence influences the success of national security, because humans are those that would work with it. They're those who buy in to make sure that whatever policies, whatever thing you're building, is really robust, and then they make sure that it's functioning. So you can do all the fancy policies. If you don't involve the humans, if they don't understand it, it's all going to come crumbling. So for new frontiers like what we have, like AI and cybersecurity, every time it feels as though you are drinking from a fire hose. You wake up and there's a new time, you wake up, there's something happening, and you are the human is almost at the crossfire, thinking, what can we do to protect ourselves? Who is responsible? How much responsibility do we have as users? And what is the maybe the other stakeholders, like developers, like manufacturers, the companies, the government? What is their responsibility for us? And if you work in cybersecurity, you probably hear things like a human is the weakest link in every system, right? And that is why when we're talking about trust, it's really behoves on everybody working in this space to make sure that every aspect of human engagement is brought to the forefront so that humans are understanding to build it. And I'm going to, I mentioned before, even outside technology, things like COVID, for example, there were companies who were very far ahead of us in the global south because they had broken down stuff for the countries to understand. And countries like Germany and Singapore, for instance, there were instances where the contact tracing were pretty much at the peak because their citizens understood what technologies they were using, how to access them, and for what reason. If even in contexts like COVID, where it is life-threatening, making citizens aware gave us results. In this area where it feels as though there's almost something new happening, there's almost a new threat happening, it will also behove on us to bring humans to the forefront. And the ways you can do this, like you mentioned, is that public interest approach. And in that sense, if you don't have the human at the center and you build them with a human-centric approach, it may almost 100% fail. So we'll use an example of you probably are in your room, and this happened to me. I just went on LinkedIn one day and saw that somebody has shared an article about Q-Day, and it's about quantum. If you know quantum, of you've heard about it, you've heard about the possibilities of how it can in essence breach whatever encryption we know because of how fast and strong it is, right? And they're talking about Q-Day in this article, and they're saying, okay, Q-Day is probably looming around, and what Q-Day looks like is a day where everything that is encryption based or encryption protected could fail. And me thinking as a user, well, what could that day look like? Is it bound to happen? Because we've seen threats from places like CrowdStrike, where even airports were shut down completely. And you're thinking about even a more powerful threat like Q-Day. And even somebody, for me, for somebody like me in research, if that got me to panic, imagine my mom, who just really uses technology, and thinking, what does that mean to us? Some of these threats stifle our use of technology, and it calls on this. It calls on us within this ecosystem to make sure that everybody's responsibility is pretty much taken into consideration. Government is playing its part, businesses are playing their part without fail. For example, there have been many instances where users have pretty much lost trust in the system because of things like the concept of, in quote, privacy washing. So you go into a website and a company will write this nice label and banner telling you how to protect your privacy, but the actions that follow really is different from what they're saying, and you're wondering exactly what it is exactly what it is they're saying and what it is they're offering. So in the past, that those things that happen even with privacy washing, cybersecurity washing, it's like promises that do not really stand, and so it doesn't give the trust to humans to be able to believe in the system. For us in the global south, it's even well because we are playing a bit of catch up when it comes to digital sovereignty. We are not in total control of the data, where it sits, how it's processed, because we are in constant battle with big tech, and our systems and infrastructure are still developing. So if there is something we have to do to make sure that there is this confidence and there's this trust, what does that look like? And I'll just put that in three buckets. The first one is embedding transparency and participation in policy design. We say it a lot, it feels almost like a cliche, but like I said, you've got to put people from different backgrounds, from the different stakeholder groups in one room and encourage participation. And we've seen some examples even on the African continent with Kenya. They set very strong examples with open digital ID consultations. And if we all can follow the lead globally, that would be amazing. And another thing, aside from this embedding transparency and participation in policy design, I'd also think about investing in civic digital literacy. Also, pretty common. Even the steps to do this is not really in the complexity of what it looks like, but civic and digital literacy is one of the big things. If, like I said, people don't understand the risks and the tools at play, whether it is AI, it is quantum or encryption, they can't trust or protect themselves. So aside from embedding trust and transparency, let's also push towards civic digital literacy. And I'll end with one thing about building cross-border trust frameworks. We cannot do it alone, and the effort shouldn't be in silos. Some of these frontiers and the innovation you're seeing is not only national, it's not within the national borders, and our response also shouldn't also be standalone in thinking only about national. We should look at how to coordinate a global approach in a way that's in our emerging regions.
Lily, your 5 minutes is up.
All right, sure. Thank you. I think I just landed on those three. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your intervention, Lily. And I like the fact that you've talked about policy design. Now, there's something that we've always say that to have a nice policy should be forward-looking and future-proof. Okay, so in terms of trust, we need policies that are forward-looking and future-proof. So now, when it comes to also policy, I have somebody here, Bolutife Adisa. You've been in the policy engagements, like you write policy for ICANN in your constituency, NPOC constituency, and you're a cybersecurity expert. So I just want you to talk about a bit about these policy measures that are needed to enhance trust and security in terms of digital infrastructure, and also against just these emerging frontiers threats like AI-driven attacks and quantum vulnerabilities, and also how can we make them adaptable to future challenges while maintaining stakeholder confidence. 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm Bolutife Adisa for the record, and it's a pleasure to be here today. So because I have very limited time, I will just go straight into it. Thank you, Ernest. When we talk about trust and security, I would like to first say that these are not just technical challenges. They are more of social contracts that we need to really consider, because to reinforce trust and security, especially when it comes to AI and new digital technologies, I would say we need three foundational policy pillars. So I'm adopting this from a position of operating a critical infrastructure, because when we talk critical infrastructure, we don't just talk protection, we talk resilience. So in order to ensure resilience, first, we need to ensure zero trust by design for AI systems. What is zero trust by design? Zero trust is quite a common buzzword, but basically what it means is that we never trust and we always verify. So this is sort of a model that should be adopted, because it's mandatory to have multi-factor authentication on some of these systems, and to ensure that we don't have sort of a breakdown that eventually we end up regretting. It's also important to vet the systems, not just the systems, but the models, as well as the data that feeds into the systems. And this also should not be a one-off thing. It's a continuous process, and then it should be done more regularly. And that's zero trust by design. Another one is that policy needs to mandate AI threat modeling, as well as red teaming for these AI systems. So in the critical infrastructure space, it's a regulatory requirement actually that you conduct red teaming continuously to check on the resilience of your systems. And this is very important because, like the earlier speaker said, the attackers are moving at the speed of light. So it's important that we constantly test the resilience. Even when you're not being attacked, you need to ensure that this is in place. And then lastly, someone talked about quantum computing, which is also quite important because right now it's a race against time. The current encryption we have in place, how does it stand against quantum computing or quantum power computers? And this also now brings the recommendation that we need to think more post-quantum cryptography to protect systems, especially like AI and other powerful systems that could be exploited. And also, as good as they are for humanity, we can also see the downside of it. So very quickly, the other part, which is how do we ensure that the policy remains multi-stakeholder, remains efficient. I think, first of all, we need to look at the UK and Singapore, what they have done in terms of sandboxing innovation. So you put innovators in a controlled environment to really test out and test the resilience of these AI systems. This is very important. It's also a way to ensure engagement of the required people. Second would be to have sunset clauses and policy APIs. So sunset clauses basically means that policy does not go forever. It gets to a point where it expires, and then you can do a review and see if these policies are still adaptable in this context. And also, policy API is an important technology development, which we have machine-readable policies, such that these systems can spot violations by themselves, and this is also quite important. And lastly, like the IGF, we have the multi-stakeholder process. I think it's important that this is also still embedded in what we call AI governance or digital technology governance. I think my time is up, so I'd like to give the floor back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bolitife, for that. And I like the fact that you've talked about the multi-stakeholder approach in this. And also talking about that, I would also frame it in the context of international cooperation. As you are aware that as new technologies evolve on the market, threats are also evolving. So there's need for international cooperations to ensure that we are in good standing and we are running at the same pace. So I'm going to give a floor to Dr. Kozefi Duban, who you are into the multiple organizations, and one of them is intergovernmental organizations like AI Policy Advisory, the AU, and UN. So, Dr. Kozefi, I just want you to give your perspective on how international cooperation can ensure that AI in cybersecurity respects sovereignty and human rights. And also, I just wanted to talk about what safeguards are needed to prevent fragmentation and also to build trust and align with these global standards while balancing national interests and collective security. 5 minutes.
Thank you, moderator. Good morning to everyone. I'm very honored to speak here today, and I would like to thank the predecessor of this very interesting table. Yes, my name is Dr. Kozefi from Chad. I co-founded the Global Youth AI Advisory Body, coordinating also the AI and cyber diplomacy as well department, and then coordinating also the Chad Youth IGF and Africa IGF MAC member. In the face of emerging threats such as driven AI cyber attacks, deepfake disinformation, and quantum-enabled espionage, international cooperation must be grounded in mutual respect for sovereignty, while aligning with universal values of human rights and digital trust. As youth advisors, we have co-developed an AI for Humanity Code of Conduct, emphasizing AI for peace and security, freedom of expression, and responsible enforcement of international law. So this ethical framework can help guide cyber security cooperation globally, ensuring AI systems are not weaponized by states or corporations in ways that suppress civil liberties or undermine sovereign governance. So in a perspective, in a local perspective from Chad, for instance, our Chad Youth IGF annual meeting we held last April 2025, we saw firsthand how the globalization of information throughout social media challenges local governance. So cybersecurity cannot be divorced from digital literacy, especially in regions like the Sahel, where I come from, and where state capacity and youth vulnerability are key issues. So we recommend regional capacity building initiatives that link local realities to global frameworks, such as the Global Digital Compact, through open consultation and public-private partnerships, academic as well. So in conclusion, to prevent fragmentation and foster interoperability, we need multilateral AI treaties, embedding human rights safeguards by design, also intercontinental threat intelligence sharing, rooted in trust and inclusivity. And we need also to harmonize cyber norms that balance national digital sovereignty with collective global security. So finally, trust is built not only through technical protocols, but also throughout youth inclusion, cultural contextualizations, and transparent AI governance. Africa in general is not just a beneficiary, it is a co-architect of secure digital future. So let's commit to decentralized governance models that reflect these diverse voices and realities. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kuzefi, for that. So I'll now go to Dr. Monojit. Dr. Monojit, you've done quite a number of research in cyber governance and national security area, more especially in the geopolitics. So you have expertise in this thing. So my question to you would be, how should government prioritize cybersecurity policies to serve their national interest in their in this competitive environment? What strategies should they adopt to balance immediate security needs with long-term digital resilience, especially considering the geopolitical tension around digital sovereignty and the enforcement of critical security measures? You have the floor.
Oh, thank you, moderator. First of all, it becomes a bit challenging, when you have your predecessor already speaking everything, and you're coming inside and you have to add on something new. Let me add my bit, So, firstly, a disclaimer that although I'm associated with the think tank of the Ministry of Defense, but the views are my personal. And regarding to the views that you mentioned that about prioritizing the policies, I'll give you a very recent example that what the government has initiated in India. We have come up with an approach of a whole of nation approach. So here what we have tried is that we have introduced a future warfare course, and this is very much in open, it's not classified. And what we have tried to involve is that not just from the tri-services but also the other stakeholders who really, because you see today's time infrastructure is not solely residing with the government, and because in a democratic setup like India, undoubtedly the world's largest democracy, so we have to take care of the whole of nation approach as the first and foremost priority to address these type of issues. So what we have done is that we have brought in all the stakeholders, and this is one such a kind we are starting to go off. But my query, or rather I would submit here that the basic understanding here we have all, we are giving our opinion, largely it remains same, if not contrasting, but sometimes contradicting as well. But we all remain united to the fact that there should be a central institution, or at least the platform UN that we are currently sitting and discussing. But with the given passage of time, we see somehow the relevance of the United Nations or the international body at large is shrinking. So we need to have a good discussion between government to government at a larger level, so that the platform remains significant. Like United Nations as such, if you see, has been I'll not say critique, but yes, its reality has been failed in some cases. So we should focus on building up and strengthening the central body. So here, when I mention that government to government, I don't certainly push for a multilateral forum here. That IGF should always be a multi-stakeholder discussion. But with this, there is a really strong need that we should come up beforehand, because you see, space, cyberspace is no more just a tool of communication. It's a frontier of warfare. After air, space, land, water, cyber is a frontier of warfare. Domain of warfare rather. So before the current scenario, what happens, every country is in the verge of making the first. So there is no threshold in terms of a cyber war or a cyber say. So what happens, there are accepted definitions by some countries that mentions if at all a large scale cyber attack is waged, so it can be retaliated with a full scale war. So what is the threshold? So, before a country decides its threshold and wages a full-time war or a full-fledged war, it is for us to decide. And for this, I believe we will still need a further discussion at the apex level and the centralized format under the UN, which I feel. And in addition to this, let me also take that since the convergence are more within the UN and the member countries, so it should always start off with something like which is a problem to everyone. Like, for example, tackling the fake news. So these are the common goals which every nation, whether they have a diverging views within the UN setup, but they do agree to the point that fake news is a challenge. So with this, I believe that that if at all we can start off with this convergence, slowly and steadily we can find out some more arenas for collaboration and cooperation that can always help us to form some effective policy that can ultimately pave the way. Because otherwise, every government has a different interest. For us, it may be different, and for countries which may be belligerent to us or which are neutral to us, will have a different strategy. And in cyber, you cannot trust anyone, because always, the cyber actors, we often trace it back to having a state-sponsored support mechanism in some way or the other. And since as my previous speaker has rightly mentioned, the lack of international law that governs, still, because we need someone or some architectural body that can actually oversee. Because you see the existing mechanism, and if you see the International Court of Justice or many such the case, International Criminal Court, but many countries do not recognize that. If you see, so there should be some form of mechanism. So with this, I believe my time is close to end. So I hand over. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Monijit. You've highlighted quite a number of very important things, and one of them that has stood out is about how these fake news, deepfakes are emerging. And I think governments are finding so challenging to combat these deepfakes and everything. And it's creating a different perception in the minds of users. And most of these deepfakes, when they are thrown out there, is that there is what we call reputation damage and everything. So it's a challenge. So I agree with you. We really need to move in that steps. Now, I want to bring it to the civil society perspective, because we know that civil society plays a key role in shaping accountable and transparent cybersecurity policies. So I'm going to invite Keja, or say, from your perspective, you've been in the civic space, and you're also a public technology interest specialist. So how do you see civil society organization influence the development of cybersecurity framework and to ensure that they uphold human rights and social inclusion, especially when governments are deploying measures to safeguard national security? So how can civil society contribute to a balanced approach that protects both sovereignty and individual freedoms?
Thank you. Thank you very much. It seems the topic is very, very interesting, cybersecurity, Odyssey. And I would like to ask ourselves the Odyssey, the synonyms, something like expedition, very long. And for the record, my name is Osei Keja, and I would like to also welcome everyone to this conversation. Such a very long journey. And if you are here, I would like to ask you, do you believe that the future of cybersecurity lies in civil society? Just shoot your hand up if you do believe. Good. 2 hands. 3. Awesome. it seems everything is being shelved to us, pushed to us. Oh, civil society, do this. Civil society, do this. And look at the topic. Very long expedition, cybersecurity, and it's for the preserve of some people. I do acknowledge that civil society organizations play a very crucial role. They serve as the bulwark and indispensable counterweights in cybersecurity governance. But who should? The question is, who are the people there? Is it me and you, or the tech? Everyone is involved. So the term civil society organization should not be the preserve of everyone. I do believe everyone should be involved. That's my first argument. Then let's go into it. What have you been doing in terms of all this conversation? It's a lot, honestly. Maybe my 5 minutes may elapse from education to entirely awareness to everything is being pushed to us. Civil society, do this. Civil society, do this. But one thing which is quite critical is, demanding transparency and accountability. Many governments, I come from Ghana, and we have this RTI, where request for information bill, where you write to governments to demand certain information. I think we can liken that to the Freedom of Information Act in the US, where we request for transparency and all that. But as I mentioned, how many civil society organizations are there in certain marginalized even communities, or even has access to there? So in that regard, in that nuance, we need to activate something there. I do acknowledge it, we all can't be activists. We all can't be at the forefront of things. But how can you and I contribute in a little way in demanding accountability, policy accountability? Lily mentioned about human-centric approach. We'll come to that. Bolu mentioned about sunset clauses and all that. You're a lawyer here. In your individual capacity, what can you do to demand accountability? Have you written a letter to your Ministry of Communications demanding about surveillance? And with regard to the balance, which are legitimate powers and illegitimate powers, we need to activate something. How do we energize the base? So, secondly, co-creating right-centric standards, something civil society have been doing. And it's quite seen the case of the EU, most countries, where there's co-creation of impact assessment for critical infrastructure. And it's seen in most African countries too, some African countries, where there's the civil society helping co-creating impact, human rights impact assessments and all. I say security without rights is brittle. Security without human rights is brittle. Is at the center of it, or the conversation we are having. And we need to push for an inclusive, equitable human rights for the long-term health of society. Lastly, I would like to talk about another strategy in civil society is forging unlikely alliances. We saw in the case of Brazil when they had issues with WhatsApp, and civil society serve as a trilateral dialogue where they brought the government inside and also big tech inside, trying to just make sure end-to-end encryption protocols were preserved. They serve as a dialogue. I know my 5 minutes may elapse, but I would like to end here that the definition of civil society should not be a preserve of a certain group. Public interest technology should not be a preserve of a certain group. We are all involved. Yes, we know we cannot be at the front, we cannot be front runners, but in our own small way, in education, creating awareness, we can cause effect. We can make things happen. So we must continue. I'll quote one of my favorite people. He said, we must continue with all our intellectual, spiritual, and spiritual energy to campaign for the emancipation of the productive forces. And there's one African proverb I do love very much. It says, we cannot clap with one hand. So let's try if you can clap with one hand. It doesn't work. collaboration. So let's collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, KJ. Yeah, we can all be activists, considering that we are all affected in one way or another. So let us be activists. Let's not leave it to civil society alone. I know technical communities. Let's also come together. Governments, everything. Yeah, all sectors. So now I'll open the floor to the room. We're going to have some questions from the room. We're going to have about maybe 10 minutes for questions from the room. Anyone who want to take up some questions?
Or comments.
Or comments.
Online.
Yeah, there's a mic there. No one? Oh, okay. Kassan, do we have some questions online?
There's a hand here.
Oh, there's a hand. Okay.
Question regarding my name is Eirik. I work for I've been working for various IT companies with security in Norway for many years. My question is, when you talk about trust, how can you expect trust if you don't have people making sure they have privacy? How do you make sure that how can you believe that the border control can be creating trust? Because you need to make sure that what is actually provided is secure. So providing the secure service would be providing the trust. How do you think about this?
Anyone want to go first? Hita?
Sure, I think I'd like, I think we've had a comment on trust from Lily. I'm not sure if she's still here in the conversation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'll prefer this thing. But I just want to say, I think transparency, I'll just put in the keyword and I'll loop in after Lily.
Okay, Lily, you can go.
Okay, just I don't know if you can see me. I'm trying to get my video on, but I'll just start by answering. I mean, in essence, trust is, if you look at it, multifaceted. And when I say multifaceted, it requires many things to happen for it to really be achieved. And I give an example. Like I said, there's been the context of what is called privacy washing. Like you go onto a platform, you see a banner, it has a title that says, hey, we preserve your privacy, or we do whatever, we don't collect data, we don't share with people, we don't sell your data. In the end, it comes a week later, and then you're getting all of these emails from people wondering how exactly they got your details to be able to even reach out to you. The concept of privacy washing has become so much out there that people do not even trust what it is that they see online and the action that follows. So what he described is actually true. There is an offering that has to come from whoever is a provider for trust to really be actualized. It is in the doing, the action that you do to back the promise you've given to a user that would ensure that the user trusts in you. And many times we've seen that trust has been trashed in the face of users, and so users do not really trust that the system would even work. So for it to work, we usually would say do the advocacy, but it's also ways that people demand this. People are asking that, look, even online, for what it is that you put on there, we want to be able to understand. And then the concept of privacy management comes in. What you're putting out there, is it only to promise me, or you really are doing what you say you do? Is there a place I can see how long my data is held for what purpose? Is there a place I can see even who it goes to or who it's shared with? So they're looking for a way to even actualize what is known as situational awareness online, so that people can perceive whatever it is they see online by way of maybe pop-ups, all these banners. They can comprehend what they're saying, and they can also anticipate any future consequences. So I would say that what you said is true. There is a need for action to follow for people to trust it. Without the action and the service level agreement being fulfilled, usually users wouldn't feel the trust. And like I said, users will feel trust for different reasons. It can be that I accept that, yes, I've been treated fairly because my data wasn't shared, or I don't accept because I later on found that you were holding my data for whatever purpose. If what you said you would do, you are doing, it also just bolsters the trust of people, and people also can feel safe using your technology you or using your platform. So that is what I'll say about it, and I hope that it's really helpful for you in the context that you were thinking.
Thank you very much, Lily. I don't know. You want to go?
Yeah, I think Lily's covered it
Oh,
already.
okay.
Yeah.
Anyone wants to? Okay, Adisa?
Yeah, so Bolutife Adisa for the record. In my opinion, I think in addition to what Lily has already said, I think security also goes side by side with trust. So if you have a secure platform, people are able to trust in what you're offering and they're able to use it more effectively, basically. So the trust also goes both ways. I think you mentioned rightly that whoever is the border control needs to ensure that whatever they provide is trustworthy. And I think that's extremely important. And it's also in line with what a lot of the speakers already mentioned. So yeah, I think ensuring that the platforms are transparent as well as secure is the major recipe for trust, especially for end users. Yeah.
Thank you, Adisa. Josefi?
Yeah, I would like just to add two words. I think before to talk about trust, we need to make sure that we have contain, control, and regulation. Whatever the language we use, I mean, users have to be sure that if they're online, they are, first of all, safe. What they use is also safe and controlled. And for that, we need like kind of national mechanisms that will allow us to control this process. It's very important. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Josefi. Anyone else want to go? Okay, so we have another question from online. I think we take this first before we come back to the room again. The question is from Tracy Hackshaw. It says, do you think there can be a one-size-fits-all set of universal cybersecurity standards that will work across all countries? Or should there be another regional or even economical status focused approach? Oh, you can. Okay.
Yeah,
KJ.
thank you very much, Tracy. Very insightful question. There's nothing like one size fits all, like a silver bullet when it comes to security or say cybersecurity issues. But I would say that, as I mentioned, security without human rights is brittle. Whatever we are designing, it must take into account of the people. They are at the center of it. What are we designing for them good? Are their rights respected? That should be the answer. Or policy harmonization may come in, it's effective, it's very good, but the core of it all must be the human-centric approach. And co-creation, it being inclusive, not designed for someone and being an afterthought. And we gather why stakeholder consultation, we throw it there. No, it doesn't work that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone wants to take that?
Yeah, I think that's okay with you. It's actually, thanks Tracy for your question. So the thing about, although we say standards is something that should, applicable across, maybe could be for a specific industry or a sector or for countries, right? When you talk about countries, you're dealing with linguistic, cultural, economic diversities, and the resources that each country have to implement, let's say, complex standards vary a lot. It could be from a human standpoint, could be finances, it could be just the local adoption and different challenges across that, right? So that way I think that, and not just that, the kind of the levels and maturity levels across countries in terms of being digital varies. So the type of cyber threats that those countries could be facing would also vary drastically. So there could be developing countries who are still transitioning into having digital services inducted to provide different public services. And there could be, countries like maybe the US or South Korea who are extremely digitized. So in that case, the threat actors, the intent, the threat landscape varies dynamically. So I think that's where standardization that is fitting all countries collectively without having inputs from different, stakeholder groups, it's not going to work. This is what I think.
Thank you very much, Ihita, for that. And for me, just to add on, I think also it's very important for this international organization, international standardization, to be encouraging countries to follow these global norms that have been set. because normally what the challenge is that many countries are not following these global norms in their respective regions. So there's this cybersecurity gap which exists among countries because some take it as a national interest. So there are a lot of issues around that. So I won't take much of your time. I don't know if we have another question from the room before we conclude. No question? All right, so from each speaker, I just want you to have just any key takeaways from this discussion, any final closing remarks. So who wants to go first? KJ?
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. It's been very, very insightful discussion, and I'm hope and my belief and my desire, aspiration that we will live here fortified, energized to work for the common good of all humans, to make sure that our security is the core of whatever we are doing. There's trust, there's privacy, and most importantly, humans are the center of everything. And let's all, in our own individual capacity, our minds, everything, contribute to this cause. Just like the topic says, cybersecurity or Odyssey, it's not a short journey, it's a very, very long journey. So let's journey together. Life, they say, is better in company. So let's all co-pilots. Thank you.
Okay, Ihita?
Yeah. So I thought it was from here. All right. So thank you so much, actually, for this opportunity today. What I understand of digital sovereignty is this as a concept cannot work in silos, and you need to have a very layered approach. And we spoke about how regional and national and even actually global cooperation is required in this realm. Then that's something, and I think we've been discussing even during WSIS and the GDC discussions as to how you need these kinds of policies and structures in place. And overall, when you look at the work that's been done in the cybersecurity space, it could be policy, regulations, standards, or any kind of activism that's also done. It has to be flexible, scalable, adaptable, adoptable by countries, organizations, and us as individuals. So I think I'll leave it to that. Yeah.
Thank you. Before I go to Dr. Monojit, Lily, any final closing remarks? Then Atsen will follow.
I think I tend to talk a lot, so I'll just end by saying this. Trust isn't a byproduct of strong policy. It is a foundation of it. Let's build with trust in mind and not think of it as an afterthought. Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. Atsen?
Yeah, Ernest, I just want to buttress that, we've spoken about a lot of things, like multiple interventions that are pushing things in the right direction. It's things like, AI for good or AI ethics or defense in depth, zero trust, separation of duties, principle of least privilege. And while I admit that some of them are technical in nature and may not be responsibility of the maybe average person or average internet user, it's worth noting that our IT and security teams have some support, And so that I do not sound like a prophet of doom or fearmonger, I think I would like to end on end with positive thoughts. So the good news is that, policy is just one side of the security triangle. We have technology and people to help as well. So when dealing with the risk, the frontier tech, things like generative AI or quantum computing that can break, encryption algorithms, we should not forget, to enlighten the people and also adopt tools that can mitigate the risks we are concerned about. So remember that a knowledgeable person is your first line of defense. And when you equip them with the right tools, then they become literal human shield for you. So I prefer this kind of statement than saying, the human is the weakest link in security chain. So regardless of your role or capacity, aim to learn more, understand how policies and regulations can be beneficial to you or your organization, and you'll definitely be playing your part. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Atsen. Dr. Monojit, you can go next.
Yeah. So when you talk about the term security, the biggest dilemma is that whether we will be building 10 schools or we'll be buying a few helicopters or ammunition. This is the standard dilemma that a country faces every time. And in terms of cyberspace, So it's either we are going to give the privacy or get the security, because privacy and security sometimes we find it don't come together. So with this, I'd love to mention that since my esteemed panelists are already working in multiple fields, so let us do something that can really pave the way for future collaboration. Like, for example, in terms of tackling of the fake news, which is, I'll reiterate that it's a challenge for every country that faces. So, at least developing some portal, and like how you see Wikipedia came up, a few years back. It was really not so supportive. I'll not use any other word, but, of late you see it has developed. But it's somehow you'll find some interesting or some valuable information. So at least if at all we can have something generated from our side, there can be one point of contact. Then we send in something, and then it verifies that whether it is right. At least it can start off in a single stem, and probably like how 5-year plan used to be there by all government and other agencies. So if at all we can plan off something in that way, it's like a 5-year plan for tackling fake news. So in this way we can have something, a convergence that can really pave the way. For otherwise, diverging views will lead up to diverging thoughts, and we may not converge in some time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Monajit. Dr. Kozef, you can go next.
First of all, I would like to say thanks to the participant for being here to listen to us. There is no good or bad idea. It's always about discussions. I would like also to say thanks to my collaborators and friends here, panelists, and also to you, moderator, for coordinating this. I won't forget about Kazan also, who is online coordinating the platform. Thank you also, Kazan. In conclusion, let me highlight this. Securing our digital future in the age of frontier technologies demands more than just reactive policies. It calls for proactive, inclusive, and ethically grounded cooperation. From N'Djamena to Nairobi, from also to Jakarta, we must build a cybersecurity ecosystem rooted in trust, guided by human rights, and resilient by design. As youth, we are not just participants, we are co-creators of the digital compact. So let's together ensure that the AI serves humanities, respects sovereignty, and protects the dignity of all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kozefi. Finally, Bolu.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for listening to us today. I think the panelists have really spoken well. For me, at the end of the day, I think trust and security are essential tools in building the digital backbone for our next century. So when we think security, when we think trust, I would like us to think more in terms of resilience, because it's important that we don't wait until things go bad before we look for solutions. So in the security sense, it's important to always test, always discuss beforehand, always see if your system fails, see if AI probably would not work in certain aspects, so that we will not fall into a situation where humanity suffers from the product of innovation that we see today. So it's important that we test the resilience of this, and we keep talking, we keep pushing it, pushing the policies, pushing the necessary frameworks that are required to ensure that these systems work for our good and not for doom, like some people might think. Yeah. But thank you very much. I would like to submit on this note. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. So my final takeaway is that I would say that trust is the foundation upon which resilient digital futures are built. Sovereignty is that fortress that protects it. Our best chance at success lies in embracing collaboration both within our regions and across borders. Only through shared standards, open dialogue, and coordinated efforts can we secure our digital societies. Thank you all for your active participation and thoughtful contribution. So let's continue this vital journey together of building bridges of trust and resilience across our regions. Thank you very much.